what people tend to miss is the difference between sadism and cruelty, or sadism and just sort of meanness. Like, it can be reactive if it's just mean. Harming people, yes, it's cruel, but it's not always premeditated. It's not always for pleasure. But sadistic behavior is intentional. It is persistent. It's the enjoyment of the suffering.
Today I'm going to talk about a really tough topic. It's triggering, in fact, so I want to warn you. Lisa and I discuss sadism in toxic relationships, which is often an unrecognized dynamic that can spell danger for the victim. Lisa, there is a topic that we have not talked about that I've been aware of and I'm becoming increasingly aware of that I'm really alarmed about, and I think that we need to all wake up to. In fact, we often excuse it and we'll say, oh, they didn't mean to. They don't know that they're doing it. Have trauma, or we'll say they just aren't empathic. That's why they behave that way. And it's sadism. And I know that's going to really shock people to hear me use the word sadism. Mine was a promise of physical intimacy would be a rich, very big part of our life. And then I got into the relationship and discovered that it was missing, and that we would go real long periods of time. And I would finally get to the place of crying, pleading for some kind of connection. No one's owed sex. Yeah, I understand it. But I'm talking about, we don't make out. We don't hold hands. We're not cuddling much. My partner was just disengaged and elsewhere. I would literally wait for the TV show to end, hoping maybe once he was satisfied that he would turn to me and we'd have a connection. Or imagine those moments where you have a really great day and it's powerful and you connect with each other and you think, oh, we're going to celebrate tonight by having this really close experience. And then he would throw something into the mix, like turning on a show that had many parts of series, and I know that I'm going to lose him till 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, deliberately thwarting me. Now, people probably hear all of this and say, well, how is that sadism? Sadism is an effort to hurt, humiliate, or harm another person deliberately for their gratification or power. And it's done deliberately, intentionally, and there's a pleasure in the thwarting of that person's experience, but also inflicting pain to them. There's actually a pleasure in the infliction of pain. I mean, I could tell that my partner knew that I was hoping that there was sort of that, growing sense of connection, which normally, hey, I was married in another relationship and I knew where that would go. There's a growing sense of connection and I knew we would end up being intimate. But in this situation, there is sort of this ha-ha, or even this kind of a smirk, like, good on me that you got affected like that. Did you recognize a sadism that might have been in your relationship, or certainly when you listen to other people's stories about this? Is this a feature that you're seeing in relationships?
It is. I see it more commonly than I think we like to admit. And I know that looking back in my own relationship, I saw parts of sadism. I think I missed how much he enjoyed hurting my feelings. Always, like you said, it felt like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't realize, he doesn't know. And that's not true at all. And I think what people tend to miss is the difference between sadism and cruelty, or sadism and just sort of meanness. Like, it can be reactive if it's just mean. Harming people, yes, it's cruel, but it's not always premeditated. It's not always for pleasure. But sadistic behavior is intentional. It is persistent. It's the enjoyment of the suffering. And you can see it sometimes, if you're really looking, in kind of a flash on their face, a little twinkle in their eye. And it's really, really crazy to watch, but I've seen it.
Yeah, it is. It's that sort of, is it called duper's delight? Is that the word that we refer to it, where they have that little smirk like, I got you? Yeah.
That's the pleasure that we're talking about. They provoke it. They escalate it. They love that. They enjoy it. They control through fear. And I find often, not always, it's relentless. They never stop. The suffering seems to be fuel.
And it's easy for us to think in these moments that, oh, they're just not empathic. They're just kind of callous. But we miss the fact that there's a smugness, a pleasure that comes out of the humiliation. And that not only that it's tearing you down, but it's done for the pleasure of the individual doing it, that they're getting something off on it. I think that's the part that's extremely disturbing, is that part of it.
I completely agree. You actually just reminded me, long story, but became aware that my ex compares his new girlfriend to me regularly. In a really, if I was going to be treated like this, then why didn't I just stay with her? Or you're just going to be like her. If you do this, then you're like her. The constant comparison, and it's been going on for years. Very sadistic. It triangulates us but it's so hurtful for her to constantly
Yeah.
be compared to someone else.
And it comes up in super subtle ways. Here's another subtle way that it showed up in my relationship. I'm realizing now that mine was extremely sadistic. So everyone knows that I wear wigs. And at the time when I got into that relationship, I hadn't really, like, in a way, come out to the world. I was trying to hide that and had been trying to hide for 10 plus years. In fact, to give you a perspective how serious of an issue it was to me, how sensitive it was, my late husband never saw me without some kind of hairpiece on, ever. Not ever. It just was something that I just felt too much shame. So he insisted right away that I somehow come and show him what I look like without a hairpiece on. And then on top of that, he would ask me these loaded questions like, do you think you could ever walk in public that way? Would you ever have the courage to go out that way? Sort of like put me on the spot to
In
see
you.
if I could do it. And one of the things I requested, because I found in his iPhone that he had a photo of one of his ex-wives sleeping. And I said to him, because I didn't wear my wig at night when I'm sleeping, I said, please never take a photo. And you know what? After I got out of that relationship, I found a photo. He took a photo of me sleeping without it. It
Oh my
was just
goodness.
this way of making me feel like this thing, that I had this thing that he was in on, that he could at any time reveal and out me. And he also knew that he had one over on me, because, by the way, he had a rich head of hair. So it was this way for him to feel like he was better than me and knew that it deeply hurt me. It was awful. And I could feel the creepy, terrible sensation to it that this person, I could feel him getting off on it, that it was very pleasurable to him to have this thing on me. Let's talk about, though, why we as survivors in these relationships, and initially we're victims because we're being victimized, why we don't recognize the sadism.
I think we don't expect it. So much of what we miss is related to a lack of education. I believed that you look at something like sadism and it's a very small group of people. It's psychopaths,
Yeah.
narcissists. I didn't even really know about narcissists, but it's like your average abuser, your average person. Like nobody's doing that. That's, you're being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're not at all being ridiculous, because when you look at some of the more overt ways that people can be sadistic and some of the more covert ways, anything from public humiliation, which I think you're sort of describing, or at least the threat of, physical intimidation, coercion, triangulation, all these things that we're talking about, those can be somewhat overt, but we miss some of the more maybe hidden kind of psychological sadistic behaviors, like goading you to react or gaslighting, but in sort of a gleeful way, destroying moments of joy and really taking pleasure in that. Those are something that you can't really pinpoint. And I don't think it's what society knows as sadistic. I don't
Yeah,
think
or
that
you-
it seems obvious.
Or even forgetting to show up for something super, super important, like you're getting an award at work and they don't show up to the gathering for it. Those types of things. Exactly. We don't see that as somebody deliberately hurting us as a way to get back and as a way to get even, and for their own enjoyment as well. So we don't see it that way, and then we miss it. I also think that we think people are more innocent than they actually are. We give people so much credit to being a nicer version than what we're actually living with, that we just like, no, that's not possible. We end up thinking that it's some like putting thumb screws on somebody, when you like, we think it's this overt kind of like almost sort of Hollywood looking kind of experience. We don't imagine that it's the subtle twist. Here's one that one of my family members shared. She'd lost a lot of weight, is extremely self-conscious about her body, probably because of the extreme weight loss. I'm talking way over 100 pounds. She had, obviously, excess skin. And her partner would love to like touch and rub the rolls around her waist, knowing she didn't like it. And she'd say, please don't do that. That bothers me. I mean, she'd be overt. Please don't do that. That bothers me. He goes like, yeah, but I enjoy it. Why shouldn't I enjoy something that I really enjoy? And he would continue to do that.
Knowing it hurts her. And that's the thing is like, people will start to say, yeah, but why should he miss out on something that he enjoys just because it's her body. It's her choice. She gets to decide that. It is so sadistic to say, but I understand that this hurts you, this bothers you, but I enjoy that. And I think what we actually miss is it's not that just he enjoys touching you. He enjoys that it bothers you.
Yes.
That's what we're missing.
Yes.
He's telling you the truth. Listen.
And in the moment, you know it. Here's another terrible example that happened to me. And I knew it, so I didn't participate in it, because you can tell mine was really sadistic. When we've had the period of being broken up for a month, I happened to have to be at the house that we shared, and his iPad was on the bed. I was on the iPad looking at what was happening. He was supposedly taking a day off for a retreat for his mental health. but he was actually down at a theme park with a prostitute that he had hired for the day. I know that because I actually saw the exchange between the two of them negotiating her rates. And the pictures of the two of them were coming in from that park where they stopped at these very spots to take a photo of her kissing his cheek or whatever else. Mind you, we're just broke up. We're not divorced. We don't know what's really happening in our relationship. He comes back the end of the day because I happened to cross paths with him as I'm leaving the house where I had to wait and he's coming in. He says to me, "Oh, I had a great retreat. I didn't make it all the way to where I wanted to make, but I went to this really fantastic theme park. You should go with me sometime. You and I should go together sometime." And I had this sudden flash that he wanted me, I'm even getting triggered telling you this, wanted me to stand in those locations where they took those pictures and imagine me standing in her space so he could get the pleasure of feeling that he got one over on me over and over at my expense.
Absolutely sadistic.
Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. If people are experiencing anything even close to what we're talking about, this is sadism. And these relationships are so much harder to leave because of the danger in the actual exit, right? They feed off your pain. And I think that in my experience anyway, their control tactics tend to be more extreme. It feels like warfare often. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, because you're getting to another really good point, and that is something I felt really fast in this relationship. And I have a feeling if people are recognizing this, they need to pay attention. I realized that my fear gratified him. And so if you saw me in that relationship, you would see me stoic. I was blank-faced, stoic. I don't know what happened on the Grammy red carpet this week between Bianca and Kanye West. I don't know if you saw that or not, where he was naked in a... Now, was that a decision they made together, or was that an example of coercive control? I don't know. But that's the thing. Her blank face, to me, was a huge trigger. It bothered me because that's how I survived living with someone who got off on my pain and my humiliation. And I think we underestimate this. We can't grasp the degree of twisted and perverted some people are. We miss it. And when we miss it, we miss the danger that we're in when we're in these relationships.
I think recognizing that people can be like this. There are people that will hurt you because they can. It's so oversimplified, but I think in some cases it just needs to be. They will because they can. And they get off on it. They want to. They will punish you if you try to leave them for it. And they will be relentless in their pursuit of continuing trying to control you or frankly destroy you. And they'll enjoy it. It seems so crazy, but I keep saying it because I just really want people to understand this is not as uncommon as people think.
There's a sample of the book, The Passionate Marriage by David Snarf, where he gives an exchange between two people who had been married a long time. And it's around their intimacy. Again, it happened to be around their intimacy. Here's a subtle example, how he called the husband out on it. Now, it could be the wife. I'm not saying this is a man thing. It was just how it was played out in this example. But this husband refused to show up in a way that really she found helpful, and it was hurting her. And he confronted the guy and said, "You know she's asked you not to do that. You know that it's harmful. So why do you persist?" And he just claimed, "Oh, I'm dumb. I don't remember." That's one of the ways that they show up. "I just didn't remember. I forget every single time." He said, "Really? So you forgot?" "I don't think you forgot." And he admitted, "No, I did know. I did know that I was doing it, and I did know it was bothering them." But I think we hear this, and because we tend to believe and we've been taught that the world's a good place, a just place, then we assume good things about people, and we assume that there has to be some explanation that people can't really be this twisted to do something like that. So I think part of the process is waking up to it. I'll tell you, it was only until I got out of the relationship and thought back and saw it on paper when I was writing the story for me to realize the degree that this was extremely sadistic. Mine never called me a bad name, rarely raised his voice, never touched me physically that way. But on the other hand, I knew there was a real potential threat. I saw him violent in other situations, and I knew he had a history of violence, so I knew that there was a real potential for it. So we often end up thinking that danger and sadism has to look in a certain way, so we don't realize that it can actually look like lots of stuff. I threw it into ChatGPT, and it just had lists and lists and lists of examples. And a lot of the things are things that we talk about as narcissistic abuse, but never then say that they're sadistic. We just say, yeah, they're triangulating you, or yeah, they're gaslighting you, or yeah, they're using Darvo on you. But we never say, in order to humiliate you so that you feel really bad so they can get some pleasure out of that.
On that note, though, are all narcissists sadistic? And what types
Mm.
of narcissists are most sadistic? Is it reserved for sociopaths? Does that mean anything? What's your opinion?
Yeah, that's a hard one. So this is my opinion. I wouldn't say this is based on research. I wouldn't say all narcissists are sadistic. I wouldn't say that. I think there are
Same.
types, for example, that the hero type, for example, who's a do-gooder. No, they're just doing good out there for the sake of saying that they did good so that they
Mhm.
look good. I also think the grandiose type, for example, may never be sadistic. I mean, I can imagine times when they might be. Like, for example, the smug professor who puts down the student at the student's expense for not knowing a certain terminology, that's sadism. But
Mhm.
not everybody does that. So I wouldn't say all grandiose narcissists do that. But obviously, the malignant. I mean, all I have to do is watch. I'm trying to think of the name of the show on HBO. It's not Billions, but it's, you know what one I'm talking about with
No.
the, oh shoot, that's gonna bug me now. I'm sure people listen like, oh, they know what it is. It's the one about the tycoon who owned this multimedia business in Hollywood. Yeah, he's a great example of being very, very sadistic. So I think malignant narcissists, that's a hallmark of their type. I
Mhm.
also think there's a lot of crossovers. There's a lot of types that have a piece of it and could, but not necessarily. Like I'm
Mhm.
thinking of the sexual narcissist or is just the covert narcissist. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. They can be very sadistic. Is it evidence of a sociopathy or psychopathy? That's an interesting thing. You and I got to meet Dr. Ramani and we had a discussion on sociopathy and psychopathy and the difference per her, which we didn't get into a lengthy discussion. So if Dr. Ramani, if you're listening and I'm misquoting you, I apologize for this, but was intentionality. She would say
Mhm.
a psychopath is more intentional than a sociopath. Sociopaths are more volatile. Her and I agreed on that. But both of those types are sadistic. Very
Mhm.
much so. Antisocial personality disorders are extremely sadistic because they are cold. They're looking for novelty. They're looking for that adrenaline rush. And they don't really care about how you feel. You're not a person. You're just a tool. You're an object for them to act out their rage or their agenda or their even seek their pleasure at your expense. So I would say that's a key piece of an antisocial personality disorder. But I think it can be a key piece of narcissism. But here's the thing that bothers me. I think it's happening way more than we assume that it is. That it's
Yeah.
probably a feature in a lot of relationships, but it's not something that we're openly discussing. And here's why I think it matters. Like, why talk about this today? I saw it twice this week. I only saw 2 consultations, and it was both consultations. It was a huge feature in both of them. When we don't see it, we then minimize the degree of the
Mhm.
intentionality and the danger that we're in and the cruelty that we've been facing. We excuse that. In a way, we end up betraying ourselves. I betrayed myself when I failed to see his requirement early in that dating relationship for me to show up without a wig when I had never, outside my hairdresser, never, Lisa, never showed anybody. I minimized the assault that it did to my soul for him
Mhm.
to make that request. And when I see these people sharing their stories, I see that same pain that they were brutalized by this. And so when we don't see it, we don't call it out, we don't recognize it, we're tolerating something that is death by 1,000 cuts. Absolutely. It's really bothering me this week because it stirred up stuff for me hearing these stories.
Yeah, I know the survivor stories can be really, really hard to hear. I know I hear a lot about sadism, although it's not recognized. That's not how it's being presented to me when I'm talking to clients. And when I say, like, wow, that's sadistic, really? Is it? Yes, really, it is. Or the intentionality. I think that what shocks people the most from where I sit as a coach is telling people that it's intentional and helping them process how they know that, how they can actually see that it's intentional in their relationship through how repetitious the behavior is, or
Yeah.
the eyes, that little twinkle that I said that you can kind of, they're liking this. And the fact that you continue to tell them and they do it anyway, that's sadistic. Knowing that
Yeah.
you're hurting and you continue to hurt someone that you allege to love, that is sadistic. And we miss that. We want to think so badly that there's any other reason they must love us. That leads us right into cognitive dissonance, doesn't it? It's you're
Oh,
really
it
just trying
does.
to believe
It
something that
does.
is so clearly not true.
Yeah, and the minute when you drive home, and usually what I have to do is I have to give them an example. This is the example I gave this week. I said, "So, do you have children?" And this person said, "Yes, I do." What if one of your kids had a peanut allergy, life-threatening peanut allergy? Would you forget that they had a peanut allergy? Oh, absolutely not. There'd be no peanuts within 100 miles of that kid. You can trust that parent.
Mhm.
Then why would you think that your partner can't remember this is harmful or hurtful to you? Then suddenly you can see that dawning look that's sinking in. And that's what I really love about this. If we can see it for what it is, it changes the framework completely. completely. It's now we don't feel sorry for them. We don't excuse them. We don't let them off. We now realize that this was somebody who is using behavior to assault us on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I always want to sort of ask people, like, if you can realize that this person is doing this intentionally and on purpose because they can, how does that change your empathy? Do you still feel the same level of compassion to someone who's doing it because they can versus they're traumatized and they just don't know any better? They don't know any better. You have said it. You have said it with words. You're speaking English. He's speaking English. You say, this hurts me. They continue to do it. And this belief that, but he must not understand. What do you mean he doesn't understand? He says he doesn't understand, but that keeps you in the cycle, which is sadistic in and of itself.
I would love to jump over to the podcast extra and talk about what to do if you recognize that it's happening. What should be the first steps to take to protect yourself and sort of get ahead of this? But before we do that, we had somebody from Athens, Tennessee write in for our fan mail. And this is what this individual said. These episodes help me to try and understand so much. I'm currently trying to leave and nobody understands why it's taken so long. Why I've been able to survive so much mental abuse that I can't describe, but I'm struggling to get out. This is so common, Lisa, isn't this? This is something that you and I hear all the time.
Getting out is not easy. And I think, people not understanding why it's so hard. I posted a video recently and there's a lot of like, but why stay? Why would you stay? Why don't you just leave? One of the most obvious things, and it actually, I have to be like borderline sarcastic here because this is 2025, 25% of relationships are experiencing this. How people cannot know in this day and age that leaving is the most dangerous time and that there's a risk of having your life taken, or that abusive people make it incredibly hard to leave. The financial control, the kids, I mean, even just the stuff that you don't have to be super emotional or a psychologist to understand is that it's dangerous. But in addition to that, if you're trauma bonded, if you're confused, the mixed messages, the grooming that happens, the conditioning. And what I'm hearing in what this person said is over time, you get conditioned to tolerate worse and worse behavior. And it doesn't feel as bad at some point because you've accepted this and that and this and that. Why not this? Keep going. It's just layer upon layer. You literally don't even realize how bad you are. It's sort of like being in the eye of the storm. You can't see. You do not see clearly.
Right. And I can hear in this message shame. The shame is just bleeding through this. And I think I really would like to urge this listener and every listener who identifies with this individual to know that it is really, I know that the example of a frog in boiling water probably is not a real example, doesn't actually really happen, but I think it's a great way to describe what happens in these relationships. It is slowly warming up. You don't know that it's getting hotter. You don't know that you're experiencing abuse. And initially we write it off as sort of like, oh, they had a bad day or they're hungry. This is why this happened. We don't realize that the good part, the nice part that we saw was actually the manipulation, was the part that fooled us. We really believe that's authentic. And then we live for the good part. And you know what? These people are very sophisticated. They know that whenever we start to feel like we're getting ready to leave, we pull back, we're like not quite emotionally invested. Then bam, they hit us with something that's just enough. Now in the beginning, it's more, and it's over time, it gets less and less. Eventually they can just like kiss us or smile or have a nice thing to say. And we're suddenly mollified, but we have been conditioned to hold on for hope for that. And I think also, like you mentioned, people do not understand the degree that our options are severely limited. I mean, this person's probably cut off. I have even said that. People don't understand why it's taking me so long, why it's been so hard. So that says to me, they have no social support system. They're feeling very isolated. And some of that's done intentionally for control, but financial abuse, literal cutoff to access, literal lack of privacy. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I really want those who are in this position to know, please, no shame on you. This is what happened to us. It's extremely hard to get out, extremely hard. You and I just wrapped up an interview with Joe Navarro, which people already listened to it by the time they've listened to this one, where he said it is never, never the victim's fault. And I loved how he emphasized that. It's not ever the victim's fault. So I just hope that this listener knows that we get it and that we're in support of them. And that's why you and I run that Toxic Free Relationship Club, because we know that it's really, really important for people to have a community of survivors who understand what it's like to survive something like this, to know that they're not alone, and to have the place where you can feel safe to struggle. I mean, there are members who are still in a relationship and still debating, do I leave or do I not leave? Should I? What should I do? That's totally okay. No one has an agenda for you. There's no right way to do this.
Yeah, that's so true.
Well, let's hop over to the podcast extra and talk about what to do if you're recognizing you have sadism in your relationship. But thank you so much, Lisa, for this great topic today. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Are you following us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube? You can find me at kerrymcavoyphd.com or
Find me on TikTok and YouTube at Stronger Than Before and on Instagram at Stronger Than Before Coach. And whether you're considering leaving, or have left a narcissistic relationship, find community support at our Toxic Free Relationship Club.
You can learn about this and other resources at kerrymcavoyphd.com or at strongerthanbefore.ca. And we'll see you back here next week.